Bitcoin is way too slow and it's never going to work. At least that's what the critics want to say. They want us to believe. But how can we use this misrepresented information to our advantage to make enormous wealth? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome back. I opened up with the line that Bitcoin is too slow. And as a matter of fact, it is too slow. That doesn't mean it's always going to be too slow. So I'm going to explain how we can use this slowness to our advantage and how we can find out how Bitcoin is going to speed up in the future. Now, just a little side note. I do these videos every Thursday for you. We talk about investing, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. I started a video on Tuesdays talking about before you invest, how to make more money so that you can invest. Now, what I'm doing is I'm gonna grab a question from each of the videos, and then I'm gonna do a third video a week where I'm gonna answer your questions. So I want everybody to ask questions down below. I'm gonna grab those questions, I'll answer them on the camera on the next stream. Now, I am also running a contest. If your question gets picked and I answer it on video, then I'm gonna send you $10 of Bitcoin. If your question gets upvoted to be the most important question of that video, I'm going to send you $50 of Bitcoin. Now, the only catch is that you have to be subscribed to the channel. So make sure you're subscribed, click the button down below, hit the bell to turn the alarm on, and then submit your questions. I'm gonna pick them and I'm gonna answer them, and you're gonna make money. So stay tuned for that. So back to the presentation for today. Bitcoin is way too slow. They say it's never gonna work, it's never gonna scale, it's never gonna be good because it's way too slow. And that's an inherent design of Bitcoin, of the Bitcoin blockchain. And there's just no way they can fix it. Now, there's all these new blockchains that have come up that are supposed to be faster, and they've designed to be faster, but Bitcoin is too slow, or so they want us to think. So let's take a look at that. So first of all, the Bitcoin critics are far, and I mean, there's far too many of them. They're numerous, as many as you can count. Here's a couple notable ones. We have Noel Robini. He calls it the mother of all scams. This guy is just crazy and relentless. He has spoken before Congress and the Senate and the government many times, and I hope they take him seriously so they can just kind of look past Bitcoin. We have Jamie Dimon. He's one of the biggest bankers in the United States. He calls it a fraud. We have Warren Buffett, who's one of the most well-known investors in the world. He called it rat poison. So Bitcoin has no shortage of critics, that's for sure. We find people saying something bad all the time. Some of the other things that we hear, that, you know, Bitcoin has no value. It's only for criminals. It uses way too much energy. They call it an environmental disaster. It uses too much energy. The costs of Bitcoin are way too high to transfer money. And I could go into each one of those, but I'm only gonna look at one, and that's it's too slow. So we can go into each one of these. If you'd like me, if one of these seem to be ringing a bell for you, you'd like me to answer it, leave in the comments below which of these you'd like me to go through next. But today we're gonna talk about it being too slow. So to really understand this, we got to dig in a little bit. So we have to look at Bitcoin speed and how that works. So Bitcoin is, the underlying technology is blockchain. So what it does is it puts the data into blocks of data, and every new batch of data goes into another block, and it continues to add block after block after block all the way, and it creates this long chain, a blockchain. And what happens is each block carries data, carries transactions, and then they refresh every 10 minutes. So basically the block size is limited. It only can fit so many transactions, and then they go through every 10 minutes. So basically we're stuck with about 7 transactions per second. That's about what Bitcoin can do for us, 7 transactions per second, the way it's designed today. Now, Visa, this is what everybody wants to compare it to. So Bitcoin does 7 transactions a second. Visa does 23,000. So from that perspective, they're right. How can it compete? I'm going to tell you. But before we do that, I'm going to go back a little bit. Every new technology always has critics. Every single technology has always had critics and it always will. Because what happens is we have something called normalcy bias, where we believe that our current situation, the current way things are now is normal and that will always continue. I'm gonna give you two new critics on cars. As you can see, this is some horse-drawn buggies going up and down the street. In 1898, so there was this problem, there was way too many horses, and the people in the big cities like New York, London didn't know what they were gonna do with all these horses. There was just too many. They actually had the great manure crisis where they thought that New York City and London would be buried in 9 feet of horse manure. So all these delegates in 1898 got together to discuss urban planning and what they're gonna do about the streets and the horses and whatnot. And there was these new horseless carriages that had just started coming out. And what they said at that meeting can almost give you a little chuckle. I'm gonna go ahead and read it. And it says that the dangers of cars are obvious. Stores of gasoline in the hands of people interested primarily in profit would constitute a fire and explosive hazard of the first rank. Horseless carriages propelled by gasoline might attain speeds of 14 or even 20 miles an hour. The menace to our people on the streets along our roads, poisoning the atmosphere, would call for prompt legislation, even military and economic implications that are so overwhelming. So, I mean, they couldn't imagine how could this technology work and how dangerous, and cars with gasoline that are bombs driving in the street going as fast as 14 miles an hour, and how dangerous and all these things. Critics are always going to be there. Of course, we know how that worked out. In about 15 years after this quote came out, cars outnumbered horses. And then today, imagine trying to get around on horseback again, right? In 1995, this guy, Clifford Stoll, put out an article in Newsweek magazine. And it's a great article written in 1995, and I'm gonna have the link to the full article down below. So if you wanna give it a read, it's great to help put things into perspective. So in 1995, this guy Clifford Stoll, he's an astronomer, US astronomer, and an author. And he wrote a lot about science and technology. He basically put an article out in 1995 and talked about the internet and all these things it was promising us, and how it was all going to be, how it's all ridiculous. He called it baloney, quote unquote. And he said, visionaries see a future of telecommuting workers, interactive libraries, and multimedia classrooms. They speak of electronic town meetings and virtual communities. Commerce and business will shift from offices and malls to networks and modems. And the freedom of digital networks will make government more a democracy. Baloney, he calls it. He went on to say that the truth is no online database will replace your daily newspaper. No CD-ROM can take the place of a competent teacher, and no computer network will change the way government works. And again, all those things, right? Online databases have replaced the newspapers. Yeah, newspapers are still there, but they're much less relevant than they were. No CD-ROM can take the place of a competent teacher. Well, online learning is a big piece of even the college systems of today. Now, the last piece, the way government works, I'm not sure if we're quite there. Maybe that's for the next step. But it's interesting for us to take a step back and look at previous technology cycles and see what critics said about it, so we can take the critics of today criticizing this new blockchain technology with a grain of salt. We have to put it into perspective. And again, the full link's down below. I'd recommend reading. It's pretty cool. Now, back to the question. Bitcoin's too slow. 7 seconds. Visa's 24,000 seconds. How can Bitcoin ever compete with Visa, right? First of all, that's a very, very misleading claim. So Visa and Bitcoin, that's like trying to compare apples and oranges. They're just not the same. You can't compare those things. Visa is a payment channel. It's not a settlement layer. So Visa is a payment channel. It enables us to make payments, but it's not money itself. So you can't compare the two. A settlement layer is a base layer. So gold has been the base currency for all like developed countries for like 5,000 years. And all the way up until the 1930s, even in the United States and Europe, gold was still money. As a matter of fact, JP Morgan went before Congress in a hearing in the early 1900s, and he says, quote, "Gold is money and nothing else." End quote. Even up until the 30s, gold was still money. But as you could imagine, gold is heavy. Gold is bulky. And so if I had all my wealth in gold and I wanted to pay somebody, across the state or across the country in gold, that would be very slow and it'd be very expensive. Similar to how Bitcoin, they say, is slow and expensive. So imagine if I wanted to send, this big thing of gold across the country, I'd have to get like a special delivery company to come get it. They'd probably have to get like a forklift or something to pick it up and load it. They'd have to have like armed guards transport it all the way across the country until it safely made delivery to where it was going. Imagine how expensive that could be. Imagine how much time, how long that would take, right? So what they did to scale gold, to make gold faster, was they implemented a layer 2. So now what I do is, instead of all that gold in my home safe, I go and I put it at the bank. And what the bank does is, the bank gave me a paper gold certificate saying that I have gold. So now I have a piece of paper that says I have $100 or $1,000 worth of gold, but I don't have to carry the big bulky gold bar with me. I just carry a piece of paper. Now imagine how much faster and cheaper that would be to settle. So that's a layer 2 scaling. Then we have like a layer 3 scaling, as you can see from this kind of upside down funnel here. Then we have like a layer 3. So now the bank has the gold and have the gold certificates, and then they have, say, bank checks. And now I can just transfer bank checks and put them in the mail. And then I could cancel that bank's check. I could void that bank check. If the bank check got lost, I could create a new one. That's a layer 3 scaling. Then the banks gave us like debit cards and credit cards. That's a layer 4 scaling. Then on top of credit cards, we have PayPal, Venmo, and those are like layer 5. So all these layers built on a base gold layer. So Bitcoin is also a base settlement layer. The base settlement layer is a little slow, it's a little expensive. Now, I would argue that it's a good thing. When you're talking about settling millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, you want to make sure that's slow enough to be safe. You also want it to have a little bit of fees because you don't want a bunch of spam on the network and things like that. So being a little bit slow is okay on the base layer, but how do we scale it? How do we get faster? Visa and MasterCard in my previous example are way down. They're like layer 4. So of course they're way faster. How can you compare a base layer to a layer 4? You really can't. Just to put things into perspective for you, as a merchant, if I have a store, an e-commerce store or a physical retail store, and I accept credit cards, and somebody comes in, if you come in to buy something from my e-commerce store, digital store, or retail store, and you swipe your credit card, the transaction happens right away. You see that it was approved and you walk out with your merchandise. But as a merchant, it could take me 3 to 5 days to get that money. So Bitcoin, they say, was slow and it took an hour. But Visa actually takes a couple of days. Back to this example. So Bitcoin is a base layer. We can start adding layers just like we would. So gold certificates, checks, credit cards, PayPal, etc. And so Bitcoin is a base layer and we can scale off of that. So what do we have? We have layer 2, which now is just being built. That's the Lightning Network. It's also the Liquid Network. So there's layer 2 scaling solutions that are coming out. And the way that these scaling solutions happen is it's a second layer. So it doesn't all settle on the main chain. They happen on a secondary chain and it happens way faster, way cheaper, and then they can batch record. So not every, a $2 cup of coffee at Starbucks doesn't need to be recorded on the main chain to be 100% censorship resistant and immutable for eternity. If I have $100,000 or $100 million, I want to make sure that's secure. I want to make sure nobody can seize it, steal it, manipulate it. If I want to transfer it, nobody can stop it, block it, or prevent it. So not everything has to be settled. Not everything has to be immutable. Not everything has to be censorship resistant. And that's where the multiple layers allow different priorities to happen. They compromise speed for censorship resistance. So there's other blockchains that have come out, and I'm not going to drop any names right now, but there's lots of other blockchains that have come out that said they're faster. But Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, called this the trilemma. So you have speed, you have decentralization, and you have security. And in order to get more of one, you have to give up some of another. It's a give and take between those three things. So all these other blockchains that come up, they say they're faster, but what have they sacrificed? They've typically sacrificed decentralization and security. So I say that the base layer should be 100% strong, secure, decentralized, and allow layer 2, 3, 4 to be faster and give up those trade-offs. Let layer 2, let layer 3 not be as safe, not be as secure, because I don't care about securing my cup of coffee, if that makes sense. Bitcoin is slow. Yes, it is. But that's not the way it's always going to be. Now, how do we use this to our advantage? Well, we know that these critics are out there constantly saying this. As I said from the first slide, that Robini has been testifying before Congress, telling them that it's a scam and it's never going to work. And so we know that what they're saying is wrong. They either don't understand it or they're intentionally manipulating it. We understand, yes, it's slow. However, there are scaling solutions in place today that are making up massive ground. And in the very near future, it's gonna work out just fine. So we use all that FUD, we use all those critics, all that bad news they're pouring in and keeping the prices down. We use that to our advantage to allow us to accumulate. We can buy in now while it's cheap. So the main thing is patience. And I always talk about patience, right? The price is a distraction. When you're investing in new technology cycles, it's different than investing in other asset classes. Other asset classes have other things and you look at them and you value them different, but new technologies are different. There's 4 phases. And with money, we've been using money for so long, it's going to take multiple generations to kind of change this. So we have to be patient. And it starts at the bottom as like a digital collectible. It starts as like something collectible, like, oh, this is kind of cool. I want to start collecting them. Well, after a while, the more people that collect them, and then maybe they start getting a little bit more scarce, they start gaining value. And then they've gained enough value where now they become a store of value. That's meaning that I could park my money there and feel good about it. Other things that are stores of value are gold coins, jewelry, diamonds, a lot of really fine art, expensive art. And then after enough people have put money into it and it's become a big enough store of value, you move up and then you finally become a medium of exchange. So once that store value is big enough and it's stable enough, that's the problem, we need to get stability, then it can become a medium of exchange. And then as it continues to progress, then it finally becomes a unit of account, and then it becomes a global money. So right now we're halfway between the digital collectible and a store of value. We're not quite to the full store of value yet because it's still pretty volatile, but we're on our way there. Once we pass that, we'll start working on the medium exchange. So we have to be patient, understand where we're at in this cycle. Hope that answers your questions about Bitcoin. Is it too slow? Yes, it is, but layer 2 is here. Layer 2 is scaling. The speed is here. It's gonna be everything we need it to be. Hopefully you like this video. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. I work for the feedback. I like to make content that is gonna bring you value. So give me a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe if you haven't already so I can choose your questions. Yeah, and leave a comment so I can choose your questions, get picked, you can win some money. Leave comments so I can answer those. I love to engage with everybody down below. And that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. To your success, I'm out.